Negative, sir, and what I'm going to do is let me line up. It's going to be north of the doze. Wait a minute, there is somebody walking around, so is that individual you by any chance?
Good job, Black Hawk 5. Welcome back, friends, to the shop. The 2020 Wildland firefighting season has officially kicked off in our area. Now, our home's not under threat, but there's a big fire kicking up just to the south of here that a couple of our friends' homes are potentially in threat. So it's about the time, it's kind of my annual thing to go through all of the gear, get everything ready. I called them and told them, keep me informed on that. And if you need any help or it starts getting close to your house, we'll be there to help you. We kind of do that for one another. I've got some local friends that have fire skid units, and you know, sometimes you just need a little bit extra help, especially when resources are really spread thin. I've seen a lot of houses burned to the ground for lack of a shovel and a scoop of dirt because people left and were evacuated their home when maybe they should have stayed. Personal calls. So I'm putting together all the stuff for the QTAC, the skid unit. I thought you might enjoy kind of seeing the accoutrement, the tools and stuff. When we get done with that, I'm going to go to work on the pack system and my personal gear. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to share that. We could do a second video on that. But let's jump into the forestry stuff. It's pretty fascinating, and I think you'll enjoy it. Probably the best place to start would be with the hose. This is a green FSS hose bag. We'll keep hose in. Now we're going to use 3 different sizes of hose in forestry, and what's a little bit different, or actually quite a bit different than the structure guys, is that we use a single jacketed forestry hose. It's much thinner and lightweight. Single jacket meaning just one layer, not like the heavy duty stuff that the structure guys use. And the 3 sizes are 3/4 inch, which is called toy hose, which is essentially a glorified garden hose. We have the 1 inch right here, single jacket of 1 inch, and the 1.5. Now there's specific reasons for these, and it kind of comes down to volume and what they call friction loss. Now friction loss is kind of interesting, and what that means is that there's friction built up in the hose as the water runs through it that steals pressure from your tank. So just because you have miles and miles of fire hose doesn't necessarily mean that you can lay a hose that's a mile long. It all depends on the pump, right? Well, so let's say, for example, if our pump has the ability to pump 150 psi, we have to take into account on how many pieces of hose we can put in. And the smaller hose that we put on, the more friction loss there is. Something like this can have 5-6 pounds of pressure of loss per 100 feet, per what they call a stick, where your 1 inch here is going to have maybe 3. And your 1.5 inches is going to have 1. So when you're laying out fire line and stuff, you need to really consider that, because if you put too much hose out, pretty soon at the end of your nozzle, you have a half a pressure, or worse yet, negative, right? So that's really important. And how we figure that, of course, is the little Wildland Firefighter's Bible, the IRPG, the Incident Response Pocket Guide. If you know the contents of this, a wonderful little book, then you will be probably one of the best educated wildland firefighters in the world. But if you don't know it, what's so nice is they've put this together, the Forest Service, over years and years. All of the experience that we've learned and the accidents and the tragedies have all come into play to make this little book, and it's really an incredible resource, and heaven help you if you are caught on the fire line without this. But perfect example, water delivery information, we can see right there. There's a whole page dedicated to all of that. It tells you how much you lose for friction loss, for elevation, even our appliances that we'll move into next. Each one of these is rated, and we know, we can basically tell how much pressure we're going to lose. So we can calculate really quickly in our head how much hose that we can is a maximum stretch for the pump that we're using at the time. This here before you is a pretty respectable complement of appliances. This is my own personal set here, so it's kind of a ragtag group of things that I have been given or I've bought on eBay, or some of the stuff I bought new, but it's basically kind of what you need to operate on the fire ground. And we'll have everything. You have to be very versatile. You have everything from our gated Ys, our 1.5 inch gated Ys right here for our main trunk lines. to our water thieves here, to our small appliances for our 3/4 toy hose for a mop up and cleanup, or where water is really at a premium. So all of these things all have to mix and work together. To further complicate things, we have interagency issues, right? So we have the U.S. Forest Service that uses a particular thread pattern, a very coarse thread pattern here. That is, I always forget it here. It's called the, what is it called? It's called the NPSH, right? So that works good if you're with the Forest Service, but if the DNR show up, well, then they use the quarter turn, right? And the quarter turn is kind of cool because all the fittings are the same. So whatever appliance you put on any hose, it's always going to work forward, reverse compatible. But you'll come into that. So when you get into with the Forest Service and then the DNR interfacing, and then you might have some local or some private guys that are running standard pipe thread, you have to be able to accommodate all of those things. So that's why you see so many. So you have step downs, males and females, all of that sort of thing. And then these are adapters here to go from standard pipe to the NP thread pattern and that sort of thing. As well as we'll have nozzles. This is one of my favorite things. This is a 1-inch forestry nozzle, meaning that this will fit on a 1-inch fire hose. And it's a combination nozzle where it will give you, if you turn the dial here, a nice straight stream, which is good for getting down under roots and things where you need to get some penetration. And if you flip it over to this side, you're going to get more of a like a shower. I don't know what else to call it. You can see the little perforated holes in there. Combination nozzle is very nice. You're not going to flow a ton of water with this because it's only 1 inch, but when you're talking about remote areas, water is very, very precious. It's been said, and it's pretty much been my experience, the cost of getting water to a wildland fire when you're dumping it on the fire and you're using it is, imagine it like milk. It has the same value. That's how expensive it is to get it on the ground. So we're very, very careful. It's a valuable resource that's expensive and it's difficult to replace. So a lot of the stuff you see may look a little bit small, but used in conjunction with proper tools and training, it's incredible what you can do with it. Just some standard basic 1.5-inch nozzles. You know, this is going to flow a ton of water. This is going to be, you know, last case. You don't want to do that. It's going to burn out your water supply pretty quick. Here's another interesting forestry style nozzle on the quarter turn, right? But I have all the adapters so I can go from any thread to any thread and I can interface and work with anyone. And this is kind of a cool one. It just basically gives you 4 or 5 different orifices or so. Yeah, 4 right there, from small up to larger, where you can meter and control your water a little bit. Some tape, various different tapes and things. If you come across a tree that is a hazard or dangerous, you'll put a killer tree tape on there. If you're in hazardous areas where you need to have an escape route to get out for a trigger point, you'll flag that. And all of these are color coordinated and everyone's pretty much on the same page. There's even tape that will say bee's nest or caution. You know, we run into bee's nests all the time, and that's always kind of a problem. These are kind of interesting little guys. So when we're running our main line, what we'll typically do is we'll run a long 1.5-inch line, bring you up here to eye height, but this is a water thief right here. So if you look inside, if you need to steal a little laterals, what a lateral is what we'll do is we'll hook onto the fire pump and then we'll run these long lines, and every 100 or maybe 200 feet, we'll stick one of these guys in there, right? And we'll run a lateral, meaning a hand line off there. So we'll encompass an entire building or even an entire fire line or even a forest with this stuff, thousands, if not miles of feet of it with shutoffs and laterals. So we can't flow water all the time. We don't have enough. If we were to open up everything that we have out, it would just, there wouldn't be any pressure right there. So like a commercial sprinkler system where you have zones that you turn one zone on, turn the next on, we operate the same way. So if we don't know exactly where the fire is going to be, we'll imagine wrapping a lateral around an entire house, and every 100 feet we have a smaller hose, maybe a 1-incher with a nozzle on it, and everything's staged and pressurized and ready to go. So wherever that fire comes, we can rush to that and open that up and fight that fire and move around, and that way we can keep our water going. So one kind of clever trick for doing that is what they call a water thief. So this would go in line on an 1.5-inch line, and it just basically gives you, you're just stealing, you're thieving a little bit of water off there from an 1.5 inch to a 1-inch lateral. And if you look inside there, you can see the diversion deal, and there's a knob on it that will open up, and you can control how much water you want. So it's all about water management and taking care of that stuff. To the untrained eye, these fire skids can look pretty complicated with all of their hoses and valves and stuff, but it's actually quite simple. You break it down as your inlet and your outlet. You've got water coming in one side, water coming out the other side. And just like all of our hoses, we're going to have places that we can connect those to. So we're going to have, for example, right here, we've got the 1.5-inch outlet that we put the gated Y on. Now we can come out with our main lines. Here, right here, we have a little 1-inch line, and all these can be reduced down. So we could run toy hose, run anything you want. Even with the Q-Tech, there's even an option that you could run a 2-inch if you had to. I don't know why you would ever do that, but it would be an option right there. So we'll put this on here, we'll run a quick lateral. This forestry stuff is so cool and so interesting. I think it's for gear guys. I just like it's just the quality of everything, the tradition of it all, and it's just so unique. You don't see it all the time, and it's just a joy to work with. It's just so well thought out and so simple and so versatile. So we've got one of each here. We've got an 1.5-inch and a 1-inch. Now those of you who guys are astute will notice that these hoses are rolled up backwards. What does that mean? That means that there's a male and a female, right? When you see the male on the outside, what that tells you is someone has rolled it up backwards, hopefully because to tell you that there's something wrong with it. It's got a hole in it, or it's burnt or something. Just a quick way to notice that. The reason why these are rolled up this way is that these were bought off an auction from the U.S. Forest Service, and they condemned the whole thing as being faulty. But we've got into them, and every single piece that we found has been either new or never, almost lightly used, or new, never used. We haven't had one piece anything wrong with it. So the efficiency of the federal government, right? So if you're a real alpha Chad, you should be able to take these 100-footers, and if you do it right, unwind them in one roll like that. Now this being backwards, this is not ideal because I want to connect this. I'm throwing that to the fire, right? I want to connect this to my pump or my engine. I've got the wrong end, so now I've got to swap them. That's why you roll them that way. So we'll just turn them around here. Now the 1.5-inchers are not so easy to throw, but usually you can do it. Perfect. So to start our lateral, we want to go 1.5 inches. We want to go big, right? Normally I'd have a ball valve on here. This Q-Tech didn't come with the 1.5 inch supply, so I'm going to order one, but I'll have a normal ball valve on here, but I'll hook this up directly until then because I need my gated Y. With the 1.5 inch lateral wrapped around the structure that we've been tasked to protect, just imagine the red barn here is someone's house. We're going to wrap this entire thing with a trunk line. It's pretty common on these laterals to add one about every 200 feet. You're going to add a gated Y. What that's going to give you the ability to do is to extend your lateral beyond, to continue surrounding the perimeter, or to get alongside of a road or whatever, and then you can always shut off. And if you burn through a hose or something, you want to have these valves all over the place, because if you burn up a hose and you lose pressure, you don't want the whole system to go down. That way you can isolate them and shut them down. So what I would do at the 200-foot point, and why you do that, because we're going to add a 100-footer right here, you want those nozzles to be able to meet. So two guys can come together and get complete coverage. So whatever you're doing, make sure that happens. So we're just going to reduce down here to our 1 inch. 1 inch is a whole lot easier to drag. 1.5 inch, even single jacketed fire hose with water in it is exceedingly heavy. And we can look at our IRPG here, and it'll tell us, we can tell exactly how heavy it is. How much water do you think you can get in a 3/4 inch hose, a garden hose that's 100 feet long? Well, it tells us right here 2 gallons. If it's 1 inch, it's 4 gallons. So if it's 1.5 inches, that's 9 gallons. At 8 gallons a pound, that adds up quick. That's hard to hump that all over the forest. One good practice with your small engines is when you shut them off, turn the fuel off and let it run out of fuel. And that way you'll keep that bowl from gunking up near as much. Make sure we have our valves on, everything's set up, recirculate. This has been the best Honda engine I've ever had. I've got several of these red ones with the white can, and this one starts just so easy. Oh, don't prove me wrong now. I didn't have the choke on. There we go. I just told you guys I've never had a piece of new hose with a hole in it. There you go. That's why you check them. You check everything before you take it on a fire. But nonetheless, here we have, now we've got the ability to fight forest fire. So if we were going to defend this building, or we were going to keep our wood piles from burning up, a couple guys with these can do a lot of damage. Here's the straight stream I was telling you about on the combination forestry nozzle. And if I turn this over here, I get an adjustable, basically a small mist. So I can keep things down, do wet lines. mop up and that sort of thing. And when I'm done, it just lays down. This whole system's all charged, and then you go where the fire is, where you need it, you pick up and you start fighting it. That's how it works. And that's basically it. So one thing that makes that's unique to fire pumps is they have to have the ability to what we call pull a draft, meaning you have to be able to fill itself with a water supply. Very, very commonly done when I'm on an engine to go and find a water supply. It could be a portable tank. Just imagine like an industrial strength blow up swimming pool. Call them pumpkins. You'll see them orange around on fires. You can back up to those, and you can actually pull water into the tank and refill yourself. I've done it in streams. I've done it in all manner of different things, and it works very effectively. And this, of course, is the exact same thing. This is called a hard suction line, and it's got a foot valve on it, meaning it's a one-way valve that will let water go one way, but not the other. Now, theoretically, if we check in our little book, it'll tell us here that we can lift water. We could actually fill this tank from a source that's 22 feet below the inlet of the pump. Now, I've never seen anyone lift water that high. Maybe in the most perfect environment you could. I've lifted water maybe 12, 13 feet, if that. And that takes some skill and patience for sure. But what's cool about that with this system, you look at it and you think, well, that's a very small tank. You know, how long is that really going to last trying to save your house with it? You know, it's going to be out in a minute, you know, if you're using 1.5-inch line. But all we have to do is if we can set this thing next to a creek or set this thing next to a pond, put the hard suction line in, or even what we have set up here is just some cheap Walmart swimming pools, just above the ground inflatable swimming pools. You know, you're talking thousands and thousands of gallons. So you put that swimming pool or that hot tub in a place where you can draft from it. Now you've got a massive supply of water that you can go. And if you need to pick up and move, if you need to, you're not just stuck, you know, being tethered to a swimming pool. Let's say you start getting spotting fires down below. You yank those banjo fittings, you yank that hard suction, your tank is full, and then you rush down there and you deal with it, and then you can come back. So it's all about options and versatility. So I hope you enjoyed it. It's a great passion of mine. I very much enjoy it. I've worked on the engine side, I've worked on the hand crew side. I like all of it. It's fascinating to me, and it's a wonderful thing to do. If you're a young person and you don't have a lot going on and you're not sure what you want to do, I strongly, strongly urge you, and do this a year in advance, to get onto the government websites and get your name in and be persistent and get on a fire crew. Spend a summer on a fire crew, and it will change your life. You'll meet people, you'll experience things that you didn't know were even possible, you'll build teamwork, and you'll have memories that will last your life. And I can say that because anyone who's ever done it, you can talk to a guy that maybe fought fire 70 years ago, and he'll always identify himself as a wildland firefighter. And we have a fun saying. It says, why do we need wildland firefighters? Well, the structure guys, they need to have heroes too.